Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town of Monroe Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for April 23rd, 2019. I'd like to ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Robert O'Neill.
Here.
Seth Bader is absent. Michael Murphy.
Here.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Kevin Scully.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. So, welcome everybody. We have a rather short. Oh yes. Before we get rolling, fire exits are to the front and through these back doors and out the sides. In case of a fire, everybody make your way out into the parking lot and we'll count heads out there. Make sure we're all there. So as I was saying, we have a rather short agenda tonight. There were originally 3 items on the agenda, but now there are only 2. The first item that was on the agenda that came off is the Con Kudo application. And I'd just like to point out that I went through their application submittal, and there are no survey maps of any sort in that submittal. And I don't know how this board could render an opinion on side yard variances without having a survey map.
I do have longer maps that were at the office that I did not give with your application, then I apologize. And then I didn't bring them because they weren't on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, but you know, any maps that we do receive, you know, that's the important thing here with area variances. We have to see a map.
Right, when I pulled them off the agenda, I just left them off to the side and forgot when you came in to pick up the other day. Otherwise, I would have given them to you.
All right, so that item being out of the way, the next item on the agenda is Jacob Bickle. New item.
Come on up to the table, please. Sit down. I know. He's very nervous about coming tonight.
Okay.
Pull that microphone closer. You can tilt it down. There you go. Very good.
I can speak loud.
There we are.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Bickle.
Good evening.
Just to brief everybody, the application here is here for an area variance for additions being proposed on an existing dwelling. The property is located on Durant Road between County Highway 105 and Old Country Road. Being situated as it is, this property has the distinct pleasure of having 3 front yards. So all those will apply. Mr. Bickle, if you'd like to summarize, you know, what's in this application package, what you're here requesting, and why?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. I purchased the house, and I like it to do it for myself and my wife. We married all the kids, and I don't have the picture in front of me. I guess you have it. Mm-hmm. The garage in front of the house is being bumped out like 6 feet out of the house towards the street to the Rand Drive. The entrance from to the Rand into the house is straight into the dining room. So I proposed a plan to straighten up a little bit, continue and the same, to level out a little bit, the same where the garage in front of to the Rand, and continue a little bit over the door entrance to the dining room, because my wife said if you want me to come live there, you cannot come in straight to the dining room. You have to make me a little mudroom and put the coats and the shoes out there. So that's why I am trying to do that little mudroom, and it will be nice. I'll finish it very nice. It's gonna be continuously with the same bump out, which is now continuously with the garage
on the
which
same
is
plane as the front of the
same
house garage.
continuation. It's not gonna be look like bump out or something. I'll finish it very nicely, make the neighborhood so much nicer, and finish it very, it's gonna be my house, my summer house, my vacation house.
Got it.
It's gonna be a benefit for everybody, actually.
And what variances are being requested?
Well, this is, as I mentioned before, this is a parcel of land. It's a long, narrow parcel of land that has frontage on 3 roads.
Right.
So the front yard setback, and so it's got 3 front yard setbacks and 1 rear yard setback. The front yard requirement is 40 feet, and the rear yard is 50 feet. The way this house is situated now, they only have a 23-foot front yard,
Okay.
and they have a rear yard of 25. Based on Mr. Bickle's proposed addition, even though it's along the same plane as the front of the house, the way the lot is shaped and the house is situated, the front yard would be reduced to 20 feet, where 40 is required, and the rear yard is going to be reduced from 25 down to 20, where 50 is required.
Got it.
So there's already substantial setback variances on this house. This is just a minor addition to that,
So it's non-conforming as it is.
as it stands
As it
now,
stands.
yes.
Yeah.
Were there prior variances that had been granted that permitted this?
I
Or-
went to Ben, and I gave him the letter, and what he did is, so Dave sent me an email today, could I please advise the board for tonight's meeting on the Bickle application, whether the town's record shows if there were any prior variances granted on the property. The existing structure is non-conforming as to bulk without the proposed addition, and the board should be informed as to whether this is because the house predates the current code and is therefore legally pre-existing non-conforming. Or if it was permitted the current deficit setbacks via a prior variance. Also, a note on Ben denial letters suggests a variance may be necessary for lot coverage. So he indicated that the house definitely predates the current code and that it is therefore legally pre-existing non-conforming.
Pre-
Then regarding the 20%, he said that he, in speaking with Mr. Bickle prior to him coming to us, suggested he go to a surveyor to have the percentage of the property computed. That is something that the board will need before any decisions can be granted.
It's, the property is much less than 20% on the property. It's
Right,
very-
but they need to see documentation from a licensed surveyor.
Right, I mean, that goes for all of the setbacks here. I don't know, Maureen, if you have a full copy of the map that we didn't receive, but
Nope, this is exactly what I got.
has no title blocks on it, no dates. There are markings on the map all over, calling out the proposed addition in red ink and everything.
Well, the red ink is Ben.
Okay, but, the point being is that, a survey map is a legal document and it cannot be altered by anybody other than the surveyor who prepares it. So, we really need to see an updated survey map of the property in order to forward this application. We don't want to put you through all of that without having some kind of sense as to whether or not that's going to gain you anything, whether or not these variances would be granted. So, open it up to questions from the board.
Yeah, well, the reason the rear is, there's a proposal to build a retaining wall in the back.
I don't,
Retaining wall for door.
maybe it's an old one.
It looks
I
like
don't
it's
know.
the back of the garage.
Well, no, the
There's a
reason,
drawing back here. It looks
Can I-
like a-
can
looks
I
like
step
the,
up?
Of course.
Yeah.
yeah. It looks like the building inspector may have drawn it out. It looks like all his red marks are here, so.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
The other side. Oh, because it's required from from the permit wise, Ben in the town is requiring me to do a egress window. Instead to do an egress window, we were talking about doing just a exit door there. So it's even more safe.
Okay.
So I'm gonna do a exit with a regular door and cemented, so it's more safe even, not just a egress.
but
So
the,
the
that's
back
why.
of the garage is below
Not
grade?
the garage.
yeah, this is the back of
There's
the
a
house.
cellar, beside the garage there's a cellar.
Oh, okay. And that's,
Different.
oh, so
Yeah,
that's
this
below,
this house has 4 levels actually. 4 half levels.
Oh,
This
Okay.
was built by Bloomingdale Stairs. I didn't even know when I purchased that. So it's
So
we
they're into
built.
stairs and,
It's a very nice guy. He built a very nice house, and I have no idea when I purchased that. That's why I'm keeping it for myself.
Right,
So-
but the reason we're being asked for the variance on the rear is because there's gonna be this retaining wall is gonna be built. So there's a couple different variances being
well,
requested.
the retaining wall, if it's open to the sky, you know, really, it doesn't have a roof on it, so that may not be a required
requirement,
variance.
Right?
If it's open to the sky. I mean, if it's just a pit in the ground with a little retaining wall
Right.
coming to a doorway, that may not apply to the building setback.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a covered portion of the building.
Right, that was
It-
why I was.
Yeah, it may or may not. It looks like Ben in his letter is suggesting that it is a variance that's required,
Well, it's in the application.
and it's in the application, so. One of the issues going forward, which we always do, so you know how the board operates, typically we have this first meeting, or one or two first meetings before we schedule the public hearing. One of the reasons for that is because we have to issue public hearing notices to the public, so we need to know in the public hearing notice what variances are actually required. So, in regard to the lot area, it's certainly, I mean, to the naked eye, without being a surveyor or looking at it, computing it out, it doesn't look to me as a layperson that he's in danger of exceeding
Yeah,
the 20% coverage, unless my eye is truly deceiving me on this document. But I think what the board would want, one way or the other, is for you to submit at some point before it considers things, is that survey that was discussed, a formal survey that has a bulk table that shows, what the existing conditions are, what the proposed conditions are, and which variances are required. And I think, to the extent that the board would be interested in, proceeding to schedule a public hearing tonight, for next meeting, I'm not sure if you're ready to do that or not.
Not without first seeing the map,
Okay.
I think. Because, it may take him time to get the mapping done, if he chooses to go that route.
Right.
The,
I was gonna say regarding that rear yard in Ben's letter, on the second page, he spells out these variances in the rear yard. The existing setback, the available setback now is 25 feet, and he doesn't really change that. And if you see his writing in red.
Right.
He said, so I don't think he's counting the retaining wall as decreasing
Oh,
the existing.
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I think, it's funny, now you look at it, the 25 feet is the existing, it's
Right.
not a new,
Right.
so it may
So
be
he's just
that,
restating it.
He's just
and
restating it,
understanding
yeah.
that it's-
Okay.
Yeah.
well, I'm sure that in fact, I know that there's a code section in your code that says, you can't alter or expand an existing structure if it's non-conforming.
Right.
Right.
So
that's
it
why.
would have been fine as is, but the fact that Mr. Bickle's requesting the variance in the front now makes it a requirement to also request the variance in the back, even though the retaining wall isn't counting to reduce
Right,
the
I
existing
didn't realize
25
He
feet.
didn't reduce that setback. I thought he had.
Right,
Yeah, he just restated it.
Yeah, that's why I was asking that.
Okay.
right. So I think in the interim, we can ask Ben to clarify that and make sure that, the board is aware, one way or the other, is that variance required for the 25 feet. I think it's pretty clear. I think we figured it out. So I think that is, ultimately, when you do put it on for a hearing, assuming that you do, the variant, it will require a variance there, as indicated in Ben's letter.
One other item, Mr. Bickle, I noticed that there was an application in here to connect to the central sewer system.
It's done.
That's done? Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate very much the town. It was very smooth and very easy.
Nice.
And it's a pleasure for me to work with the town. I didn't know before, but you guys are very nice.
Now, the other thing, Norina, got all these little house plans with no borders,
That's
no...
what came in with the.
That's the way it came in?
Came from
Okay,
the
'cause
building
I
department to
asked
me.
because sometimes they do and sometimes we don't.
Yeah, no, this is what I got.
This is what it is.
You got the only thing was, like I said, when Con came off, I didn't even pass anything around from him.
Yeah.
But this is
Again,
everything
Mr.
that came
Bickle.
with Mr. Bickle.
Just a matter of clarification, when we take action on these matters, we need like a complete set of plans with signatures and seals of the professionals who prepare them.
Can I?
Sure.
just to clarify, as I see you, I have the sealed plans by Ben. I gave it into the town. This is just a copy that Ben made, and I copied this to you guys. Also, I have the original. I just closed this property like not too far ago. Very professional, and I didn't mark anything. It's in the town has it. Ben has it in his file, the original.
Okay,
or he has it.
As the applicant, it's your responsibility to give multiple
I did.
copies to the
Okay.
board
I
for
did
this
not.
application. So if he's got one copy, he's got his copy.
I will-
We need our copies.
So I should make like 8 original copies from the survey.
Yeah,
For
Well,
the survey and the house
I
plan.
need
This is-
one for each board
We
member.
have it.
as long
We
as
have
that's
it.
what
We
they're
just have
requesting.
We just have copies here.
Yeah, I
made.
just have the smaller version of the copies, so I
We
need.
need a
Okay,
full
no problem.
sheet, correct scale, signatures, title blocks, so we know who prepared it, when it was
Sure,
prepared,
sure.
that
It's
it's got the
all
endorsement
sealed.
of a professional designer on it.
If we have she's gonna. If I don't understand something, I'm sure she will explain me how to do it.
Okay.
She was very nice till now, so
What, am I not nice now?
no, up to this second, she gave me nice
To and
directions.
including.
Right.
She comforted me, and it's my
continuing.
first time
Well,
approaching actually my town of Monroe. So I'm
yeah,
glad to see you guys.
sure.
All right, so does anybody else have any questions?
No, no more questions.
So then I think where we are now is it's a matter of completing the application with all the necessary maps and plans. And then resubmitting that material, and we'll reschedule you for another hearing when the application is complete. And at that time, if everything's in order, then we can schedule the public hearing for the following month.
So
So you have to submit all the stuff that they're requesting tonight to me by May 7th at noon.
we cannot go decide now for public hearing. Only first.
No, they
yeah,
wanna-
okay.
The
Let them have all
application
this-
has to be complete
Right.
before we
I understand.
hold the public hearing.
I understand. For me, it's a learning curve.
No.
Right, so May 7th, you'll submit all your stuff to me by May 7th at noon. The next meeting is May 28th here. And then if everything goes well, you'll be set for a public hearing in June.
I need to be here.
Of course you do.
Oh, I
Somebody
might-
has to be here to represent you.
I can send someone. Okay. I
Yeah, if you
might
can't be here, you have to send someone to represent your project.
Okay.
The other gentleman that came in with you the first time can come. I don't
know.
remember his name, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
My builder, actually, I think.
So-
Oh, okay.
So
Maybe.
at the public hearing, you know what the public hearing is. There's notices sent out to your neighbors, and if anybody has any issues, they could come and speak.
I'm a few of the neighbors.
Yeah, oh, okay. But,
Oh, he's gonna be speaking to himself.
but it's at that meeting that an approval or.
I know. I
can
respect
be-
that 100%. And they're gonna like it when I'm done with this because it's gonna be nicer.
I'm sure.
So far, it was a little bit
Yep, you're making it
slummed
look
down. Now
neater.
I'm gonna make it nicer. You understand?
Nice.
Now, before we send Mr. Bickle off to do all this work and engage a surveyor to provide an updated survey, he's going to have some expenditures on that and take some time to do it. You know, without actually polling the board, are we sending him in the right direction here? Is there anything more?
I think we're sending them in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it.
We're comfortable?
Yeah, virtually the setback in the front is the same as
That's what it is already.
so,
Okay.
as long as Ben, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that rear
Right,
setback is the same.
It's the same.
Yeah, just to confirm that,
Maybe
that's,
just double check with Ben that that's his intent. And, so, all that being said, I agree with you.
I intend to do the same flat in the front continuously 100%, just with the same continuously with the garage. Nothing more. Just the same thing. It's in the plan very clearly.
Right, so you're only doing that
2 feet.
20-foot wide, 6-foot deep
Same,
addition.
Yeah.
the same continuation as the
Garage.
bump, and continue as an entrance, not to go in straight to the dining room, to have a little bit a coat room, a little mudroom entrance, and to take off the shoes and keep it outside and make my wife more comfortable.
There you go.
And be willing to go there.
Happy wife, happy life.
She
Great.
said, if you do it, I'll come. If not,
Yeah,
I'm not.
so do you want
Take
her
the
to
extra time and
come?
effort to make it happen.
Okay. Okay, I think,
Yeah, otherwise,
All right.
otherwise you may be way out in the shed up here.
Yeah, I don't want to take a chance. It's a nice big lot, by the way,
Yeah.
to the other side. It's interesting. Such a small house, such a big lot.
Great.
You know, this house is a nice, very vulnerable area. You know, it's very important. It should be nicer than it's right now. I don't know if you know the house.
Sure. Yeah, I drove that.
It's a very people pass by there, and it
Yep.
looks like a slum a little bit. I'll make it nicer. Everything.
Beautiful.
God's willing, you know. I need to make my town nicer. You know? It's my town.
Okay, so then I'll see you in the office with your revised plans anytime between now and the 7th.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And if I don't understand exactly, I will.
Just ask the questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll get them for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night and a happy
too.
holiday. From
You too.
You too.
okay,
Thank you.
Very nice meeting you.
Likewise.
good night.
Good night.
Okay. That brings us up to our next application, which is Lutfur Raman. This is a continuation of an application that was here once before, back in November of 2018.
Sidebar, our engineer had actually done work on this property previously, you remember hearing on it,
So is he here for this
He
again
is here
tonight?
for this, but actually, he was just, it's coincidence that he actually had done work many years ago on that property when it was being built.
Oh, on Mr.
On-
Pickles' property.
Yes,
For Blooming Grove Stair Company, the guy who owns it.
That explains all the different levels in the house. So many
Probably, yeah.
stairs.
Temporary house, it was a leftover lot. Introduction?
yes. My name is Mitchell Mayer. I'm an attorney in Central Valley, New York. My address.
Speak into the microphone.
My address is P.O. Box 628, Central Valley, New York, 10917. To my left is Michael Sandor. He's a professional engineer. And to the left of Mr. Sandor is Mr. Romney, who's the property owner. So we're here today again for our second hearing related to our area variances, so as related to a driveway in the front portion of that property and in the parking.
Okay.
Well, they're also, it's not just area variances, is it? It's-
Maybe I
it's-
should just,
It's
listen, we
relating
were
to
here
the
a few
parking.
months ago, and I know the board had concerns, or they raised the issue regarding the front and the side yards. So I do have a survey that was prepared when the building was constructed. I'd like to hand that out to you.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's, just to make things clear though, the application isn't for area variances, is it? It's for a variance to allow for a parking area in a place where it's not permitted. So it's not setback issues.
It would still be termed an area
Area
variance,
variance.
it's sort of a term of art, just because it's not a setback. It's area as opposed to a
Got it.
use variance,
Got
that's
it,
all.
so it's not setback variances that are being requested.
Well,
Shall be.
yeah, I can let the applicant speak to that, but I think that one of the things, to my recollection of my notes, that the board was concerned about is that it appeared that the existing setbacks, or a variety of them, I'm not sure which ones, did not comply with the current code.
Right, but
So the question that was presented to the applicant back in November had been, what's the origin of that? What variances do you actually need, et cetera? So I think the board had been requesting a survey with a bulk table.
right.
And those original ones were, I believe, in conformity with the setbacks at the time when the house was built, back in 2005, I believe. So they had met all criteria at that time. It's the new changes in the ZBA rulings that have affected us going forward.
Yeah, but I don't even see any zoning data on here from the original survey. This is just a survey of the lot, no zoning data, as to the 2005 code.
I can address that. I made copies of the previous zoning.
Thank you very much.
On the survey map that you have, in the upper left-hand corner, it referenced the filed map information, and it's noted that the file map information is dated, the map was filed in 1924. The zoning code, when the building was built in 2005. And when the application for the building permit was requested, it was the June 2005 code that was in effect. And I made copies of that for you with the cover sheet. And if you go to the next page, or go to the rear page, which is the bulk requirements in SR 10, it does have front yard 30 feet, side yard 13 and 28, and rear yard 35, and the 50% lot coverage. However, if you go to that section of the code, which is 39 on the second page, under D, it references maps that were filed prior to 1954. And if you go through that, this particular lot, when it was issued a building permit, were fully conforming with those regulations when the building permit was issued. So those side yards and front yards were conforming when the building permit was issued and the CO was issued for the building.
Right. But again, I'm going to go back to what we're talking about. We're not talking about, I mean, I know we
Right, I mean, that
initially.
was
does
raised.
clear up
The initial
the question that we
question,
had about
right.
it. So that, I thank you for that information. That's helpful.
Right.
But I guess what brings us here is that you constructed a new driveway in the front of the house, a double-wide driveway, and that is fully in the front yard, which is what the building inspector sent you here for. Could we just review the chronology of events here, what happened, how it got constructed, when the permit was requested, and how you ended up here?
There was a building permit issued for a pool.
Let's talk about.
Well, I
the
am.
garage.
I want to tell you basically a history. There was a building permit issued for a pool, and it was never closed out. I believe the building inspector went out to review that permit that was issued but never closed, and he saw a few items. One was the pool, first of all, not being closed out, an enclosed fence, et cetera, and there was a question regarding some low retaining walls on the property. And the third issue was the parking in the front yard, that parking area, which is really what we're here for.
Right.
The pool issue, I believe, has been closed out. The issues regarding the low retaining walls has been closed out through the building inspector. So this was the open item which required a visit here to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's how we got here. It was the fact that an open building permit was investigated, and then this.
Okay, but why you landed here was you built a driveway in the front yard that wasn't previously there.
That's correct.
Okay, so, I mean, was there a road cut permit applied for?
No.
No. Okay.
And
So-
by the
so
way,
then- So then that construction happened outside of any permits that were
Correct.
granted? Okay,
Right.
I just wanted to clarify that. So, based on the last meeting, you came back this time and you're presenting us with some photographs of this parcel and some surrounding parcels.
Correct. There's been a review of the homes in the neighborhood, and we were trying to find out how many would be in the same circumstances as my clients. And I believe, I think it was 13 out of 25 homes
maybe 10.
that have front parking areas that would that my client is trying to seek that type of relief also.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what you were trying to portray here with these photographs. I thought you were trying to portray the driveway widths. So I was out there, I took a look around, drove up and down the street and looked at how many driveways there were out there that were single driveways, double driveways, and quadruple driveways, such as this one. There were 17 driveways that are single driveways, 7 driveways that are double wide driveways, and then only this one that is a quadruple wide driveway. And there's 45, based on your survey maps, there's 45-foot width of pavement across the front of this lot that is only 80 feet wide. So it's even greater than 50% of the front yard is covered with asphalt. So I think that's, you know, one of the issues here in this application is the fact that it, you know, it's not in character in keeping with the rest of the lots in that area. This is a heavily developed lot in comparison to all the lots surrounding it, and then on top of that, we went to pave the front yard. You know, so that's what brought you to this board tonight.
That's correct.
Right, you know, like if you look at the application, obviously the zoning laws that are being violated are, which you need a variance for, are 57-51, which states that you can't have, I mean, 5751 states that there won't be a parking, let's see. In all districts, an accessory garage or accessory parking area, it's basically C, which says that a private parking area, I'm not sure where it is in here, but basically it's saying that you can't have a parking area in your front yard.
That's under 5738, I believe.
5738,
Yeah,
correct.
accessory building uses.
Right. In any district, no private garage or other accessory parking, building or parking area shall be within a required front yard.
Right.
That's the 5738. It says, except where provided if it's an exception of 38H, which is basically a business, and then 5751 is something to do with like covered porches and stuff. So basically, you know, what we're talking about is the fact that there's a paved front yard here, correct?
We definitely have paved that front yard.
Right.
And originally was without permit. We're trying to seek to have that variance approved now by the board, acting in good faith going forward. My client at the time did not know that he needed to come for variances to be able to do that. He was a layperson. His family, I know his mother and his father had moved into the household,
Right.
and they needed additional parking. They're living on the first floor, so at that time, to give them access to the front with their car, it was just much more convenient due to their
Right.
age and their disabilities.
I mean, we get these kind of requests, people doing things that they shouldn't have done, you know, so it's obviously, you know, it's our responsibility to consider that. But I just wanted to be clear as to what exactly it is that we are considering, and it's that, okay.
Correct. I think we're in compliance with that, and I think we agree with that through our application. Those are the things that we're looking to get these variances and positive ruling by the board.
Right, and, you know, part of this is, that this is a self-created encroachment into the front yard. You know, and was there an alternative way to accomplish this parking? Well, the side driveway that existed previously has room for 8 cars. You know, it's a double wide driveway, it's over 80 feet long, and now, you know, you've built this extra wide parking area in the front yard. You know, when I was out there the other day, there was a large pickup truck, a big 4-passenger or 4-door pickup truck in the front yard, and a big BMW SUV. So I mean, you know, are the grandparents that are need this easy access. They can climb up into these high vehicles, yet they can't climb up the driveway or go through a side door to get into the house. I'm just,
So the pickup truck is for my work, so when I come home, I use that one, then I go back. But usually I pickup truck, I always park down there, because when I come home to drop something out, that's why for my grocery base, that's why for my business. But normally, I have a small car, they're the one normally park in the front, but truck never pick it up, park overnight or, in front of the house. Always goes to, the other side.
I want to add something just in terms of the technicality on this, the legal technicality, back to what we started with the pre-existing non-conforming as to bulk. It's my view that I think you still need the variance because you were expanding, or you did expand, and you're looking for permission to have expanded the structure here, that you would need a variance in addition to basically legalize those other pre-existing conditions. I'm looking at section 57-5 of the code that says, except as hereinafter provided, no building or structure or part thereof shall hereafter be erected, structurally altered, enlarged, or rebuilt, except in conformity with the schedule of district regulations as to height, lot dimension, coverage, yard, court, and density regulations herein prescribed. Counsel, do you have a view as to whether, it's been my interpretation, and I think the board's interpretation, that anytime you're expanding a house, just like the last application where he was looking to put on an addition, but the back was not conforming, the fact that he's now looking for a variance for something else because he's expanding the structure, he now needs a variance for both the front and the back. Do you have a view, or do you have a pitch to the board one way or the other in that regard?
I think from what I was overhearing the prior candidate and also speaking to the engineer, that it's our position that there would not need to be any additional applications associated with those that had been pre-existing but in conforming at the time in 2005. That the only change we've made that now is affected by the new code is as related to the front yard and the parking issue that we've brought up and talked about in the last 5 or 6 minutes. So I would think that would be consistent, that, based upon the prior zoning laws that have been on the books, what has been presented by Mr. Sanford today, and what's in front of you, is that would pretty much be a type of grandfathering type of issue as related to the prior building and improvements that were done on that property. I think we would just be and should only be looking at the parking issue.
But I think the parking issue also impacts on the impervious cover that we have here. And, for that purpose, I think we should be looking at the current code, because it's a current construction, it's a new construction. So does that, looking at it in that view, what are the impervious area limitations today for that lot?
It's 30% today, and the previous code was 50%. And I just did a real rough calculation of percent impervious, and I came up with roughly 50% on the existing lot.
All right, I came up with 58% the last time I looked at it in November. So that's why I raised that question. So maybe it pays to do a detailed estimate of the impervious areas out here. That may be another issue. But, the underlying main issue is creating a parking area in the front yard, in the required front yard. That doesn't lead to a garage or to a further driveway downhill. It's just right there.
Yeah, just backing up and, getting to the spirit of the code, right?
Yeah.
Is that if you came before us before you put this in, I think this type of facility is exactly what we're trying to avoid with the zoning. Now, I'm not saying there couldn't be exceptions, but having a parking lot out in front of a house in a residential neighborhood like this is one of the reasons they have codes like this, is to not have it look like an urban area. So I'm not saying that precludes it from being granted a variance, but to me, my understanding of the spirit of the zoning code is to avoid situations like that where you have a parking lot in front of a residential house and a residential neighborhood. So that's why I'm kind of wrestling with this personally.
And I think on reviewing the documentation here, I think we were looking for, with that front parking lot, to have 2 spots only. So we would limit the amount of vehicles that actually would be on that area that you're having a potential issue with, and the code was set up for as related to aesthetics and use, so, and potential noise and other things that way it was set up for. But in this case, I think we would limit it just to the 2 vehicles, and they would not be commercial.
Right. Just, I mean, again, just following up on what I was saying, you know, in the winter when you're not allowed to park on the road in a lot of areas, there's a lot of complaints that come in because people just pull up their cars up onto their lawns, right? Nobody in the neighborhood likes that.
Not at all.
This is akin to that. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So
Yeah,
that's,
only you'd be doing it all year long, no matter what the weather.
It's not weather.
The other question I have is, you know, when you built the driveway, was there a permit issued, a curb cut permit issued by the DPW? And if not, that should be part of this application also. You know, I don't know who your contractor was, but any contractor worth his salt would file for permits before doing such construction.
I would have to agree with that you would probably need a curb cut from the highway department.
Because that's what they look to do, is limit the width of the driveway cuts, the number of driveway cuts, and this being such a small lot and having so much pavement across the width of the lot, I can't imagine, you know, the DPW would issue a permit. The other item that we discussed the last time you were here was the impact of the additional impervious area and how it drains directly to the roadway. And I don't know if you took any time to address that.
Drain under there and the pipe all the way to the back here, all the gutter water goes to the under the piping, everything.
I can answer that. I'm cognizant of the fact that you bring up the impervious coverage on the property. It used to be 30, now it's, it used to be 50, and now it's 30. That's a big difference, especially on these small lots. And how do you handle that? Well, you can handle that by putting some of the leaders and gutters for the roof drains into dry wells. That would mitigate that. And that would be something that we would look to mitigate that impervious percentage on this particular lot. And as far as the practical difficulty, I said to you the last time, I had the same problem on my house, which I live in the village, okay? I had elderly parents, elderly in-laws that really lived with us, and it was impervious. I mean, we had to have somewhere we can discharge our in-laws, and we set up an accessory apartment as well. That we went to the planning board for that. But during the application process, you know, I was served basically that I was parking in my front yard. And quite frankly, all through the town of Monroe and all through Orange County, you'll find people parking in their front yard. People convert their garages to a living space and they park their cars right in front of those garages. And part of the pictures that I presented basically showed that that's how the neighborhood is.
Not all of it, Michael. A lot of it has long, narrow driveways leading to
That's
garages
true,
in the
but
backyard.
most of the population, a good percentage of it, you know, we park in our front yards. And, you know, he has an elderly parent. I did. I'm sure a lot of people do. And it's only to accommodate them as well. So, is there a practical difficulty? Yes. You know, we're trying to take care of our folks. We're trying to keep them to live with us. And that's all part of it. And it just makes it a little easier. And I think I explained that if you went down to the lower level, you could not traverse those stairs to the first floor. It would be really difficult. So this would be something that would be easy. Now, granted, there's no ADA requirement for residential homes, but there's very strict requirements for commercial places of business, including this building. Okay, so that's all part of it too. So, and was there a mistake made? Yeah, there was. But even if he did go for a building permit, we would be before this board. And part of the mitigation with the percent impervious would be to put some of these dry wells in. So that's really why we're here, and that's why, I'm representing him.
When was this put in, this driveway?
That was October.
Of last year?
Okay, so it was constructed with the existing current zoning laws.
That's true.
Okay.
All right. Where do we go from here? My question is, does this need a road cut permit from DPW? And, even if it's after the fact, should that be part of this application package? That's one. Two is, you were talking about doing some stormwater mitigation techniques. Is there a plan for that? We haven't seen that yet. As far as fitting in with the character of the neighborhood, I think this is probably the most developed lot in that neighborhood. I mean, it was a difficult lot to build on in the first place because it was so steep. That's why it's been vacant from 1924 to 2005. It was a very steep lot, and that's why you have retaining walls down both side property lines and a series of retaining walls through your backyard to support all of that stuff. And then it was a large house that was built in comparison to what else is out there in the neighborhood. But, it got those permits back in 2005 to build like that. Now we're adding more to it, So it's like a watershed dies the death of 1,000 cuts. Everybody comes in and says, well, my little piece doesn't harm anything if you look at the whole watershed. But, everybody's little piece adds up and has a cumulative impact. I'm just not satisfied with the application as presented now, is that there's a solid reason for granting this variance. That's just, my opinion. And I'm only one of a board of 5 members.
Yeah, I mean, I have, I'm very sympathetic to family situations, as you mentioned. But I'm also on a board where we have to look at a zoning code and adhere to it. And in a situation like this is a completely, manufactured situation. It's not some sort of pre-existing situation. So the fact that it violates, the various codes that we've looked at here causes me a lot of concern.
I know just moving forward, looking like we have to address some additional issues that we have here, and with the engineer, and potentially talking about the road cut and contacting the DPW and finding out whether or not they would have granted us or will grant us related to that. I know you talked about the stormwater techniques that we're talking about where is that water going to be going, or where is it going? So we're going to need to have some type of update to you, and also if there needs to be a plan so we can reduce the amount of water that's going either to the side properties or to the road, so that it's a minimal impact, if any at all. So we understand those two issues, and we could address those. I guess as we continue to move forward and trying to get the board to take steps to hopefully grant us the area variances that we're seeking, so we can continue to have the use of that front parking lot area and not have to even remove it. We're hoping that the board could just tell us, even today, I know we heard from 2 board members who said you're worried about, maybe we wouldn't have even approved that if we came beforehand based upon what you see today. I know we're moving forward now under different circumstances where we were, without a permit, we did move forward, but we didn't do that in bad faith. And that we are trying to address specific issues here with the family and with his parents, and we understand the limitations of what we can use that front parking for, it will not be for commercial use. It'll be for residential use. It'll be used for, mostly for the senior citizens who are living in the household, who are disabled, who cannot get access in other parts of their house besides the front, and they don't have access through the garage area either. So it's most convenient for them. If anything, it's a necessity for them to have that parking in front. So we're just hoping that the board can be open-eyed as we continue to address every single issue that you do have, and we'll submit that to you and hopefully be back here in a month. We'll be able to do that.
Also, if you can add to your list quantification of the impervious area, so that we have a number on that.
I would suggest, I think what the board asked for last time remains appropriate. On the survey or whatever you're going to submit, a bulk table showing so the board can see all the existing conditions, what you're requesting a variance for, what you're not, what is the lot coverage, and showing so the board can see before it's scheduled for a public hearing and we can address this issue, whether you're going to need variances for this, for the incidental bulk, I'll call it, the pre-existing non-conforming bulk. We need to see it. Is there, lot area, lot width, front yard, total side yard? What are the measurements on a standard bulk table? I would recommend highly that the board see that so everybody knows what the existing conditions are and whether a variance is required or not.
So at this time, we're just looking to have information associated with that issue, but we're not demanding that be a necessity or a ruling by the board that the non-conforming, issues before, due to the fact that we were in compliance with the 2005 ZBA regulations at that time, and the bulk rules at that time are not necessarily going to affect what's going forward here.
No, but again, just to repeat my concern from before and our give and take, my view right now, and I could be persuaded to the contrary, is that just like the prior application, if you have a legal pre-existing non-conforming structure as to bulk and you're looking to expand it, typically the code is going to require you to get the variance not only for the area that you're expanding, but also in regard to all the other non-conformities. If you just left it as is and you didn't want to expand it at all, it's perfectly fine. You just leave it as is and nobody will bother you when you have a legal pre-existing non-conformity. But the second that you want to expand it, then all of it needs to be brought into compliance with the code, many of which you cannot bring into compliance with the code, so you would need variances to do that. That's my view, and but as a first step, let's provide the bulk table, so then we can talk about it next time before the board puts it out for a public hearing. If indeed it does need those variances, we want to make sure that the public hearing notice states those clearly, so that you don't end up getting a variance that gets you nowhere if somebody ever complains about it or otherwise.
Right. It might also help to, in the bulk table, present the 2005 data also, so that we can see, okay, in 2005, it was in conformance as far as setback requirements. Now, because they made this change, now they're going to require other variances for current zoning regulation.
Yeah, I mean, it may just be just a technicality to make sure that we're noticing and providing the relief that you need in order to get the relief that you're actually seeking.
Correct, and I think that Mr. Stafford had attempted to do today by providing you the information about what was in 2005 versus what is current, and so that is starting to educate everybody as to what's going on. And just again, for the record, I believe that since the only changes are affecting as to the front and hasn't affected the sides or the back, that I would think that we would just be focusing just on the front and its compliance with both 2005, previous to that, however, but to the current code also.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the board, I think, has already expressed it's very helpful, the information that you brought, so that the board knows that this wasn't a structure that was just built, without a permit, without conformity to current zoning, that they now know the history, that it was built, it was legal, but, so really my issue is a technical one.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to address those, but it's not the focus of what we're talking about.
Right.
But I gotta say, if this was coming to us fresh, I mean, would I be, again, talking about, are we willing to look at this? And we obviously are, but I'd be saying, well, why are you doing this? Well, you have elderly parents who need assistance, and I'd be saying, well, let's do the minimum variance we need to meet that need. That's, in my head, that's what I'm thinking about. And we want to have the least amount of variance possible, but still provide for what your parents need, the use you're trying to get at. So.
I just want to add to that. You're absolutely right. When we come to a variance board, we should seek the minimum for what we're trying to get. And the only other option is to somehow use the existing driveway. the existing driveway drops off.
Right, right. No, I get
You would
that.
still have to have steps to get up, or
Right.
more steps
No, I
to
mean,
get to the
understanding
first
that,
floor.
you know, if-
So that's the argument
right.
as far as that's concerned. The bulk tables are easy. The percent impervious are easy to address, in my opinion. I think you know that. Getting an after-the-fact permit from the highway department, we'd have to talk to the highway. That might not be a problem. It's really the aesthetics of the driveway in front of the house, currently as it stands. And I'll go back to what I said the last time. If we had a front-loaded garage, okay, a two-car front-loaded garage, it would be almost the same thing. The problem is now we have two driveways, so really that's the issue. But I think
Oh, yeah,
the
and-
overriding issue is the fact that we're trying to deal with elderly parents, and we all have done that. I did it personally in my house.
We get that, we get that. And we don't have to keep reiterating it. We're talking about a zoning law.
Correct.
We're not, I mean, we get that, you know,
Fine.
you know, and as Bob mentioned, potentially if this was coming to us fresh, we could address it and say, okay, there's space here for a one-car, you know, little driveway area that doesn't take the entire front yard up. And
Noted.
that could then help the situation. So I don't know if that's potentially an option, is that I mean, I don't know. Is there an option to
To cut the driveway size down?
cut the driveway size down to accommodate some of this? Is that something that we would want to propose? I mean, the last thing we want to do is waste
Something like-
everybody's time.
Yeah.
And have you
Correct,
come
that's why-
back for meetings, do public meetings. You know, if in the end,
It's
We
not going to
don't-
be a positive ruling for
Yeah.
what we're trying to address, correct?
right,
And, you know, and a lot of this might be the reaction of the public to this application, you know, if it comes in and it's highly contested, that, you know, that could sway the vote one way or the other.
Well, I know we have an established driveway right now. We haven't thought about whether or not cutting that to a specific dimension, which would allow us to have these two cars, I believe we're still looking for your parents, in the front of the house. I guess we can address that. I guess they have to be addressed all the other issues and move forward with the application if it's the board's findings that you would want it to be limited, the amount, the variance that we were talking about here, and then the only way we're able to get it, then we'll address that.
One other thing that comes up, we keep talking about the access for the elderly and, you know, what happens if that condition changes in a couple of years? They no longer live here. We leave this here? You know, is there some relief that could be made that way, that, you know, upon their move to another facility, that this will be vacated?
One of the issues
don't
that you
know.
have legally is that a variance is granted to a property, not a person.
Okay. Oh, it's because so much of your reason for it seems to be based on their presence in the building. That's the reason I asked the question.
Understandable.
This is kind of a dumb question either. One of the mics might be able to answer this. With the curb cutting, is that only if there's actually an existing curb?
No,
No,
that's
It-
it's
that's
just
just a
an
term.
access.
Just an access?
It's called
Okay,
a
'cause I was
curb
gonna say,
cut.
it doesn't look like there's actual
No, there's no
curbing.
curb
Yeah,
there.
kind of a
I
term
wasn't
of
familiar
phrase
with
there.
that, right.
And I was wondering too, 'cause I didn't know the answer to
Yeah.
that, so.
So it looks like, what? We know what you're requesting, and we have to get back to you by when?
May 7th at noon, to be on the May 28th agenda,
Yeah, 7:30 or 7 o'clock.
7:30 on the Eastern.
I would actually like you to consider whether or not, you know, there's an option to cut that parking area
We'll
down.
talk out.
Right, but I'm even,
And we'll
you
have
know,
an
2
answer
cars
for you.
is even, like, to me, it would seem that
One would
it should be even
suffice
be
to
just
me.
have, a you know, a space for a car, which would, you know, if you look at some of these other pictures, you can see there's, you know, various configurations
We'll
like that.
explore that for
Okay.
you.
And I think we would look for also
Yeah, I
not
think that's
just a
important.
single car, I apologize.
But I said, I think that's important to explore that.
Right, and I think when we do explore that we wouldn't be looking just at a single spot, but we look at what would be otherwise deemed to be a disabled spot, so there would have to be enough room for wheelchairs, things like that. That's so the width that we project to you, anything, the paperwork we do submit for that alternative would include that width, just for the board to know.
Yeah, standard ADA parking space with
Correct.
unloading area. Which would still be less than the 25 feet that's out there now.
I mean, we're not looking to cause you undue,
No.
issues in terms of, the parent situation or the additional cost it would be to have to remove this, but we do have to look at the zoning laws and consider, what it is we can do to try to accommodate people or, but we do have these laws for reasons, and one of the reasons is that, urbanization is something that is a big concern in this town. And creating a parking lot in your front yard is, kind of contrary to what, the laws currently are.
One related question I have for you is, how do you deal with snow in the winter with your side driveway? The side driveway runs down, along the retaining wall on the left and the house on the right. So you're kind of pinned in there. Where do you discharge all your snow?
Because I live one side and live like single road, and some of the snow I put in they have a green side also. To the right, there's plenty of space out there. So the snow
on the new driveway. I was looking at the old
The old
driveway, which,
driveway.
Is pinned in on two sides by
No,
retaining
the
walls.
old driveway, I push it down because I have a backyard. I have backyard, so I live in the backyard, and I don't use it all. I use like a half of the driveway and pile it to the driveway. That's it. I don't throw in the neighbors or anywhere else. Just use it as much I need it for a car, and the rest of them I just pile it and start and ultimately just get melted.
Okay.
Probably what happened in my old house too. At some point, it backed up so much, blocking the garages and so forth, that you actually have to have someone come in to remove it. I had to do that twice in an old house over in Blooming Grove.
Bucket
So
loader, yeah.
thank God the snow has not
Okay.
been so bad, and
No.
they've been melting pretty quickly. For whatever reason, you
Yeah.
know. There's some,
Snow excavation.
We have a lot of drainage right there, so it doesn't.
That's the bright side of climate change.
I'm not gonna bring up. There's no such thing as climate change. Where there is, so I believe in it. So.
Climate's always changing.
It always changes.
Yes, it's
That's
always
right.
changing one way or another.
All right, so I think everybody's got their list.
Thank you for your courtesies. We hope to be on your calendar for May 28th and have addressed all your issues with written documentation. And we can sit down and talk about that on the 28th and hopefully be able to move forward to a public hearing if we're able to reach that compromise with you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank
you.
very much. Have a good
take
day. Safe ride home.
There are any further questions from board members on any other matters?
No.
Good.
Good.
Anybody like to make a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So done.